Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cams rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to Hank's Think Tank. I think this makes 3 in a week, so we're doing pretty good on shows. And I've got Mark Hogan here on my left. He's going to make the introduction to this fine gentleman we have in here today. And Mark, good afternoon. How's it going, man?
It's going great, Hank. Good to be here. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah?
I think I'm going to be all right.
Well, let's get on with it because we've got a good one in the tank today.
Sounds good.
We've got U.S. Navy retired Wayne Leonard, retired as HM1. That is Hospital Corpsman First Class. 21 years in service from 1977 to 1998. That encompasses a lot of things, including Grenada and the first Gulf War. Wayne Leonard, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you.
So why don't you walk us through what made you want to join the Navy and how did that come about in the beginning?
My dad was, my mother divorced my biological father when I was like 8, 9 months old. And she met my dad when I was 6. He was in the Navy. He was stationed on subs down in Key West, Florida, but his home was Columbus, Ohio, where we were at. And make a long story short, they ended up falling in love, got married, and he took myself and my mother down to Key West, Florida. He adopted me when I was 7. And so I've pretty much grown up around Navy towns, Navy people my whole life. Mm-hmm. And met a few hospital corpsmen when I was just a kid and said that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on subs and wanted to be a hospital corpsman. And also at the time, I felt pretty safe. I didn't think college was going to make it for me. So when I graduated high school in Hawaii, where Dad was stationed at the time, I went back to Ohio and ended up working for a while and ended up joining the Navy. Left for boot camp right after Christmas.
1977.
Mm-hmm. Right, got there just in time for the big blizzard of 78.
Mm-hmm. So you did your boot camp where?
Great Lakes, Illinois, or Great Mistakes, as a lot of people call
Great
it.
Mistakes, Illinois. Huh?
Yeah. I was 15 years old then. Wow. Yeah, that's something. Yeah.
Now I do feel old.
So I was 16.
Yeah.
And we were buddies.
Yeah.
Or almost.
Yeah, we were already friends.
Yeah.
By then.
Way back when things were in black and white.
That should be a podcast in itself.
Well, we've had a few where we kind of go off on some old stories, man, and we hadn't told 1/5 of our old stories.
Yeah,
Probably don't need to.
This was here in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right here in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
So continue the journey through the Navy, man.
Went to hospital corpsman school in Great Lakes. At the time, they were still honestly downsizing from the Vietnam War as far as certain types of things were. So they didn't need a whole lot of dental and medical corps in the Marines for a long time. But then all of a sudden, when my class got there, they decided after we graduated from hospital corps school, out of a class of 32 guys, I was the only one that didn't go to the Marines at the time. I ended up, because my father was in, I had put in for father-son duty, which was a program they had at the time.
Oh, that was pretty cool.
He was stationed in Groton, Connecticut, and the closest they could get me was Newport, Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. And I was attached to the hospital there for 1.5 years, almost 2. And out of the blue, my recruiter informed me that they were downsizing there at that command, and I needed to pick something. So I ended up picking going to a command as General Hospital Corpsman. At the time, air squadrons would have what they call an aviation medicine tech who went to a school, and then they would have a general corpsman attached to them. They would have 2 corpsmen. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky enough to get VA 165, which was an A6 squadron out of Whidbey Island, Washington State.
So does that mean you're on an aircraft carrier?
No, you're stationed, the squadron's stationed on the ground at Whidbey Island. We flew to San Diego when we deployed, and we deployed it on and this is really going to date me, USS Constellation. And So I did 2 West Packs with them, with the squadron on the USS Constellation. And after that, went back to the East Coast, was attached to Groton, Connecticut, the sub base finally. My dad was still there, but at a different command now.
Mm-hmm.
And did that for 3 years. From there, I went to aviation medicine school, aviation physiology school, which is down in Pensacola, which aviation physiology is the group that trains all air crew in the Navy. Parachuting, ejection seat training, low pressure chamber, so they know what hypoxia is, water survival and stuff like that.
Right.
And I did that. I've skipped the whole USS Portland thing. Yeah, in between that and Groton was USS Portland, LSD 37 out of Little Creek, Virginia. And I spent 3 years on her. That's where I went over twice as minesweeper mothership, and then was over there. Then I went to aviation school and stuff.
And what kind of ship was that?
That's an LSD, a landing ship dock. It has what they call, it's a flat bottom, has a well deck that they can actually take the back of the boat, sink it, and ride the landing craft right up into it.
Right.
Nowadays, the newer ones, they do the LCACs. They'll just,
Wow.
the LCACs, they don't really have to go down. But with the old landing craft, they would physically have to lower the back end of the boat. Sure.
So that's kind of like the boats that you see on Saving Private Ryan that were beaching on Normandy or
No,
whatever?
those were LSTs, landing ship tank.
Okay.
And what they do is they have a certain type of hull on the front where they can go up, and then they have bow thrusters that they can push themselves off, and they open up, and they have vehicles and stuff inside, and they can do that. Those are small ships. Those are
Crazy.
a ship you never want to be on in bad weather,
Yeah, I bet.
because they would literally, because they're front heavy.
Yeah.
And then after that,
No stabilizers.
yep, taught at Norfolk Naval Air Station and retired from there.
Yeah. So tell us about some possibly pretty hairy times you might have had. I know Grenada is in that time.
That was easy. I just sat on a ship. That wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
We did nothing but sit on the ship.
I know
Was
that
it
was
Grenada, the 4-hour war? And
yeah, something like that. It was a real quick
We sat
affair.
on the ship and watched through our big eyes, which are the big binoculars, Cubans coming down to the beach, throwing their guns and wanting to cook for us.
Uh-huh.
The guys on the beach. I didn't go on the beach, but we'd sit there and watch them. They'd pull out guitars and play. They didn't want to be there.
No,
and they
of course
sure as
not.
heck didn't want to go up against a bunch of Marines. I think the
God, I
couple
don't
of
even remember what Grenada was all about. What was it all about?
med students.
Med students.
Yeah, there were medical students there at the medical school,
Uh-huh.
and when the Cubans were there, they kind of took them as hostage.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we just
And-
went and took the whole island.
But wasn't Grenada a British Commonwealth or
I don't know.
outpost? Or I mean, Margaret Thatcher was pretty pissed about the whole Grenada thing, if I remember
I
right.
don't know. All I know is that there was enough firepower.
Isn't she Queen Elizabeth's mom?
Something like that.
Who can keep track of the royals nowadays?
Yeah, that's for sure.
But that was I did spend the first time in the Gulf when we were there. The Iranians had laid mines all over the place, so the Americans sent over these minesweepers, and we were sitting out in the middle of the Gulf, and they would come up to us to get fuel and everything. And every once in a while, we'd get an Iranian, what they call bangers, little.
Well, you're talking about the Persian Gulf now.
Right.
Yeah.
And we would fight those off. We destroyed a couple of them. But other than that, I guess the biggest thing for me out of my whole career would have been on a Friday when my commanding officer told me that I was going to San Diego and then to Iraq. Out of the blue, didn't know anything about it.
So this is not a normal day coming up.
And I was on leave at the time. I just started leave. And so my wife at the time was very energetic in the way she handled things. She actually called the Command Master Chief of Naval Hospital Portsmouth. And through all of the big mess and everything, I got delayed until the following, I think, Thursday. Ended up going to San Diego and being attached to the 5th MEB, which was a group that they were putting together, a lot of reservists, a lot of units that was unique in a lot of ways.
And this is probably late 1990.
Yeah, this was November the 27th.
Happy Thanksgiving, huh?
Yeah.
What's MEB for us guys that don't know?
Marine Amphibious Battalion?
Okay.
You got me.
Okay.
Marine
Sounds right.
Expeditionary something.
Okay.
I don't know.
Huh.
I totally forgot about what
But you
that
did
was.
know that those guys were all put together to go land on the beach and kick some ass.
Well, what happened was, the story goes there was a couple of high-ranking generals that wanted to go, but they had no troops to lead. So they put this unit together, the 5th MEB.
These are my men.
So let's go. But I ended up being attached to. I got there I got there the week before Thanksgiving. We left the 27th of November. I got attached to HMLA 169, which is a Marine Corps light helicopter attack squadron. They fly Cobras and gunship Hueys, and that was probably the best time of my life. We deployed out on the USS Tarawa. We went through the Pacific, ended up into the Gulf. When we got there, the whole mission was the 5th MEB were going to be the group that landed on the beaches in Kuwait.
Right.
There's what they call Embassy Row, and in front of where most of all the embassies are, and then there's a big brick wall, and then there's this really nice beach in front of that. And we were supposedly going to take the beach and go from there. All up to about, I think it was like 4 hours or 5 hours before we were supposed to launch the night before. They finally told us we weren't going to do that.
Man, that's the last minute.
And walking around on top of that LHA, which is what the Tara was, which is a helicopter attack ship, there was a lot of people. And as a corpsman, you always wear something that says that you're a corpsman. So
Right.
people coming up and talking to me and asking me about stuff, and a lot of praying. Those guys up on top singing guitars. Just a lot of nervousness and anxiousness.
Everybody handles it their own way, I'm
A
sure.
lot of scared people,
Yeah.
if you think about it.
And now forgive me for not knowing, but this was all part of Operation Desert Storm, right? Was this Desert Storm
Yeah.
or was it pre-Desert Storm? Because wasn't there something
Well,
before
there's Desert Shield. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Desert Shield.
Desert Shield is the ramp up and then putting everything in place and part of the air, controlling the air
Okay.
in preparation for the
Yeah.
landing and the by land invasion.
And I think you're right.
Okay.
Again, at my level, we weren't told very much. It was like, go here, do this and that was pretty much it. All I can remember was that it was a scary time. Unless you actually have ever gone through it, and there's guys I hope that hear this that'll know what I'm talking about. You get that feeling inside of you that, am I going to be here tomorrow, or am I
Right.
going to?
Right.
Am I gonna
Impending
do it?
This is
Yeah.
this is the real
A lot
deal.
of letters wrote. The post office that night on board ship stayed open all night long just to take packages and to take letters. Because people that hadn't written ever were writing
Yeah.
letters to everybody in their family.
Telling people that they love them,
But the morning of the
And-
actual invasion, when the Marines that were on land started to enter into Kuwait City area, I was called to go on one of the Hueys with the XO of the squadron. And make a long story short, he didn't take that, but another lieutenant did. So myself, a crew chief, and the co-pilot got on the helo, and all we were going to do was to go to a place that they called Lonesome Dove, which was a big holding area for Iraqi prisoners.
Okay.
And all it was a big area in the desert that they took concertina wire and made a big circle and put people in it. And then they had guards. But they were talking about that they wanted to be able to do medevacs if they had to or whatever. So we went on this mission, but on our way there, we had hydraulic problems. And we ended up landing at the Kuwait International Airport not too long. I think somebody said it was like 7 or 8 hours after they took the airport.
There's
And-
still small arms fire around
No.
there.
Oh, no. You kidding me? They left. The Iraqi guard beat feet
Yeah.
the minute they got there. The Army had a couple of units there. One was a Ranger unit. They were held up in a big hangar. But when we got there, we landed it close to them, but not too close. And then we called in, and they were trying to set up getting parts and everything and getting people out there to fix the problem. We ended up staying the night with the Rangers because they had hot food, showers, and there were women there. Women. And the next morning, as I was walking back to the helo to check in with the guys to see what was going on, a C-130 landed. And I stopped and watched them, and they got out and saw that a bunch of civilians were going back over to the Ranger area, so I walked over there, and I was standing there listening.
So you got a cargo plane full of women?
No, there were women on it. Oh, that would have been nice. I'm telling you. But no, it was a representative or a senator from Wyoming, and he had put together a bunch of packages and boxes for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I was standing there, and I guess one of the aides looked at me and saw I had caduceus on my flight suit, and they go, "Hey, you want to come with us? We're going to the hospitals. Where are you from? Who are you? Blah, 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 blah." So I said, "Well, I've got to go back and ask my lieutenant." So I went back and asked the lieutenant, and he goes, "Sure, you go with him, Doc, no problem. We're going to be here for another day." So I ended up going in vans. There was 4 vans and a small truck. And we went to the 2 major hospitals in Kuwait City where they would drop the packages off and they would go through it. And I saw it. To this day, it's still burned in it. The forces that took Kuwait City were not nice. They just weren't. And nothing against the people or anything like that. Just they did some things that just weren't nice.
You're talking about the Iraqi army and the Red Guard.
But we did that. We ended up going to the zoo where they had made use of it as I was told. I never saw it, but I was told that they'd used it as a bordello and a holding place for members of certain Kuwaiti families, and that they had eliminated some we when they left.
They used the zoo because it had brick walls and high fences.
And had cages and everything else. But we did take sniper fire from a certain section of the city, but that was real quick. Just some of the things you see. It's like when the Iraqi Guard was leaving Kuwait City, they used a main highway out of it, and this was in the news. There was a reserved colonel or a lieutenant colonel that was doing some driving around in his Humvee, and he saw this massive column leaving, and he called in airstrikes. Well, we drove through that. I mean, we drove after it had happened. There were burnt tanks and trucks.
They call that the highway to hell or something like that.
Well,
they just obliterated these convoys of retreating Iraqis. And at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, you were there, we were pretty much considering rolling right through Iraq and shutting everything down.
Through Kuwait and going right up
through Kuwait and keep on going. So it wasn't like, oh, they're leaving, so let's shoot them in the back. These are still enemy combatants, and they're regrouping north, and that's where we're headed, But talk about a wipeout. Yeah. If you can find that on YouTube or any kind of Google, the Iraqi highway to hell, what an obliteration.
There was 2 warthogs that were in the area.
The A-10 Warthog is the baddest machine to ever fly in the sky.
Well, I've seen one operate in real life. I was up on a hill and watched one of them, and it's just these 2 Warthogs went through. Then they called in some A6s that dropped bombs on them, and then I guess a couple of more Warthogs. Then on top of it, the Army came in with some attack helicopters. So when we drove through it, they had opened the road. They had taken a bulldozer,
just cleared everything out of the way.
But there was a couple of bodies and stuff like that still there, and it just opens your mind what force that can do.
It took some firepower, man.
Yeah. But after that, went back to the ship. They held the ships there for a while because, like you said, they didn't know what was going to happen or whatever. And Schwarzkopf finally put out the word that we could leave. We were not lucky because at the time, Vice President Quayle's wife was in Bangladesh. They had 3 cyclones back to back, and she was there on some kind of a mission or whatever. And because we hadn't used all our supplies and everything, guess where we ended up?
You go pick her up?
Nope. We ended up in Bangladesh for almost 2.5 months doing nothing but relief. I was in a small village out, I think it was Katuba, is how you say it, Kutbe. I may be not perfect on that. But we set up a field hospital there. The Marines brought in what they call ROPO units, which turns bad water into good. And I was there for 2 weeks, and then they rotated me out and put somebody in. But that's rough, too. That gives you a whole perspective on how people around the world live.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bangladesh is...
Nothing like getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and you're walking down rice paddies on each side, and they had set up the outhouses down this path. So it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I get up. It's hot. Mosquitoes are bad. Did not take my sidearm, which we were supposed to always carry it, but I didn't. Walk down the path, and I see this big thing in the middle of the path. And I'm like, that's probably cow poo, because they're there everywhere, and they're pooing everywhere. And I take another step, and all of a sudden I see a port of it go like this.
Coiled up cobra?
Yeah, it was a king cobra. And I'm sitting there now, I'm really scared and not afraid to say I almost wet
So you
myself.
called in an A-10 Warthog, and they
I was
took
thinking
that
about
bastard
it. No,
out.
you know what happened? A little Bangladeshi soldier from the artillery unit that was there that was helping us walks up with a bamboo stick, smacks the thing in the back of the head, and flips it off into the rice paddy. Well, I turned around and went back to my rack, and the rest of the time I was there, never got up at night, ever.
Wow. Good thing you saw him. You didn't walk up on him.
Yeah, they thought that was pretty funny, so they took one of our patches, because our patch for the squadron was a cobra. So needless to say, I was ribbed and made fun of, and they somehow got one pinkish, and they made me wear it. That wasn't as bad as when I shot a camel.
You shot a camel?
To qualify to fly at the time, they wanted me to. In a UE attack gunship then, they had a 20 millimeter Gatling gun on one side and a 50 caliber on the other.
Mm-hmm.
Fun.
And you had to shoot. If you were going to fly, even as a corpsman, you had to be able to at least handle the weapon in case of an emergency.
Sure.
So we were off at Dubai. Most of all our ships and everything stopped at off Dubai, and they had set up a section where everybody could go in and practice. They had guys going in there and shooting the handheld rockets, and they had guys hitting the beach and helicopters going in and doing stuff. So on the day that I was to go up and shoot the 50, the gunny that was with me gave me my brief and showed me how to work it and all that. And we went up, and they had a big sand dunes that was there, and we were going to come in off the water. The pilot was going to turn and stop, and they had these big crates, and they had a couple old vehicles, and we were supposed to shoot down. Well, some Bedouin had moved his camels behind this thing during the night, and nobody knew it. So as I was starting to shoot, a camel came out of nowhere.
Oh, man.
And one round hit it. I felt so bad.
I bet.
I think they ended up paying the Bedouin like $500 or something like that. And they painted camels with a line through it on my helmet bag.
Next to the Cobra, huh?
Yeah, they put it in my rack, and but, yeah.
He shot down his first camel. That's good. It was self-defense.
I've got an award that they gave me too, somewhere at the house, that's got the camel on it, telling me that I'm fully, what does it say? Fully capable of killing a camel at any time, day or night.
He's qualified.
Yeah, qualified.
We got a camel. Call Wayne Leonard.
But
There's some crazy awards out there. We had a veteran on here, Vietnam vet, buddy of mine, Mark Seekins. Hey, Mark.
God bless them.
Yeah, he got an award. What was the award?
It's for rolling the best joint under fire.
Yeah, the Vietnam Cross of Gallantry for joint rolling under fire.
Yeah.
He saved his entire platoon.
But you know what? During that war, more corpsmen were killed than any other specialty unit.
Yeah, because
during
they
the
kept
Vietnam
on
War.
running out there in the middle of it to save those guys.
And
that was
that's
their
why
job.
I was scared that I would have been caught up in that. But I got to give a lot of credit to the military, the people that are in it, the enlisted, and the officers. It's a rough life, you know. But it's satisfying. It gives you a purpose, and while the money might not be great, you do get. I don't care what anybody says. You do get some bennies.
There's a reward to your conscience, if
It is.
nothing else.
It is.
And it just seems like it's just been probably for the last 10 or 15 years that it's become fashionable to say thank you for your service.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. And it never should have ever gone away. I think Vietnam era hurt that. And but thank you for your service.
Thank you. Well, when I got back, I went to church, and there were people there that weren't happy.
Yeah.
They go, "You went over there." Yeah. Why? Why couldn't you just leave people alone? I said, well, first of all, I had to follow orders. I didn't have much of a chance. It was either follow orders or go to the brig.
It's part of the deal when you sign up to defend the country.
Yeah,
you have a commander-in-chief, and it goes on down, way down to you. Yeah.
Nowadays, it's just, I have to give the active duty just a lot of credit. They're doing more with less, whether people want to believe it or not. They're going to different places. I know I've got a friend of mine whose son is just made captain in the Marine Corps. And it's like every day he's got to change what he learns or change what he does and adapt because he doesn't have this or that. And, we're spending billions and billions of dollars to help other countries. That's great, but it needs to start here.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we're number one, and we're losing it.
Well, I've seen a lot of stuff in the news in the past few years and how it's kind of softened down, requirements softening down. It's almost like, and this is just my opinion, it's like they've gotten the alpha males the hell out of there, whether it's take the shot or you're gone, or all right, folks, we'll put down the machine guns for a minute. We're going to study LGBTQ and tell you what all that stands for. And it's okay if you want to be bunk mates with, whatever.
Yeah. Well,
we have to be able to kick ass and take names and stop a rogue country.
Well, I was in the beginning of the transition for that. I mean, I have actually been on board ship where homosexuals have been kicked off and sent home and stuff like that. But at the same time, if a man or a woman can do the job and they're not going to get me killed, I don't care what they do.
I agree with that.
I'm a firm believer that, especially in the military, nowadays you got to be smart. But if we ever get into a slugfest war, it's going to be that guy on the ground with the weapon in his hand that's going to make the difference.
Right.
Not all the smart bombs, not all the smart lasers, the robots, that stuff. It's not. It's going to be the grunt.
Still going to come down to the
ground pounder.
Yeah, the blood and guts guy in the foxhole.
And for some odd reason, they've gotten away from this. It's kind of scary for old people.
Yeah. My dad was in the Navy. He did 2 years. I guess it was 2 years back in the 50s, early 50s, 51, 52. And you would never know it unless someone else told you, hey, he was in the Navy, because he didn't go walk around, hey, I was in the Navy, And he spent his entire tour at the Dallas Naval Air Station, all 2 years. He never saw salt water. He liked to say that. But he also liked to say that not one Korean MiG ever got past Dallas airspace.
That's true.
So thanks, Dad.
That's true. Nowadays, though, I'd be more worried about people coming up from the south. But
yeah, that's true.
I just, it's, if I can just say one thing, people need to realize that why the military may not be popular all the time until something happens and you get to see them in action. It's all the people in the background. It's the people that do the office work. It's the people that are in the labs. It's the people that make the equipment, fix the equipment, that do the training. they're all part of the team to support the guys in the field.
Right.
And nowadays, it's even more important because when you got somebody that's sending a drone out there to take out a unit or something in front of you, a hard target, and you're a squad of Marines, that guy better be right and know what he's doing so he doesn't drop the bombs on you.
Exactly.
So, but I loved it. My dad was in for 24 or 26. My middle brother was in 8. He was a machinist mate on subs for 8 years. Now he's been a police officer for 30. My older adopted brother, retired as a Master Chief radioman. He was on subs. So it's been my whole life.
So you never went on submarines. You had mentioned that you kind of wanted to in the beginning.
I chickened out, I'll be honest with you. When I was stationed at Groton, Connecticut, I could have probably applied to be a corpsman on, there's 2 elite groupings in the Navy as far as corpsmen go, in my opinion. One is what they call the independent duty. This is the guy that goes out on ships or in stations or whatever, and he doesn't have a doctor, doesn't have medical above him. He's it. Well, on the submarine side, they also have submarine qualified independent duty corpsmen. So if you're out there for 3 months, you're it. You're it. You're the only medical they got. They're not going to take that submarine, take it to the surface to get you off of there.
Well, logistics won't allow that.
So those 2 groups. I had decided at one point in time that I was going to go try for the surface and not the submarine. So I never did get on subs.
Right. That would be a whole different ball game. Submerged in a tin can a couple of miles below the surface. I don't know.
Well, there's a couple of these. They call them sewer pipes or whatever. And then the old saying was, what was it? Somebody said, when all the changing of homosexual and all that stuff, there was a saying, submariners, 150 go down and 75 couples come up. But that's just a joke that they used to tell. But they're close. You get people on a command, a ship or a submarine or an air unit, they become family. Everybody becomes family.
I'm sure that's a special brotherhood.
They have to. My mom used to say, and the hardest job in the Navy is being a Navy wife. But that's the same thing for Army, Air Force, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Even police.
Oh, yeah. Oh, big time. I saw my mom work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. She had 3 boys. We all worked, cut grass, whatever we could do. The Navy was never paying Dad enough money, but we always made do. The day before payday, all the families would get together and we'd have potluck. Whatever you had in your fridge, they'd make it. Everybody'd get together, whole streets.
Yeah.
And everybody would eat, and nobody'd go hungry. If somebody had a problem with their car, people would just pitch in and give the money to the people so they get their car fixed. It's a good life. It's a hard life, but it's a good life.
Would you recommend it?
In a heartbeat.
Sounds like you would.
If you're a kid and you're in high school, nowadays especially, and you don't have a clue what you want to do, there is nothing in the world better than taking 4 years and learning discipline, honor, trust, security, what all the good positive things. And it also gives you the ability, because you can go in the military and not pay a dime for food and housing.
Right, yeah.
So you put all this money into a bank account or into investments, and after 4 years now, and I'm not sure how it works now, but back then, you pretty much got your college paid for free. Now they got reserve programs and all kinds of stuff. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of them.
And 4 years goes by so quick, but it seems like forever to an 18-year-old. But you can do 4 years, learn something, save some money, be proud of yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And turn around and you're done at 22.
How'd you like to be an 18-year-old and get stationed over in Yokosuka, Japan? Sweet.
Yeah.
Or how about Naples, Italy, and travel all over Europe on your off time? I don't think Sardinia is the greatest place in the world. Diego Garcia is the worst place to go. But you stand a chance. You could get stationed for a year or two, like in Keflavik, Iceland. Not a bad place, but it's kind of remote. My dream was always to retire and go to Manila after I retired and live in Manila because my kids would be older and everything. But then when they took the bases away, I was like, nope, not going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just there's another thing. Since I've got a little bit of a platform here, there are programs where people can send boxes and letters to active duty military. It doesn't take that much time to write a letter. Take a shoebox, fill it up with stuff that's not perishable. Like, don't send chocolate, but send hard candy. Send mouthwash, toothpaste, toothbrush. I'm telling you, anything. You know, a little game, some cards. A deck of cards is probably the best friend for people out in the field and stuff. A couple of novels in paperback and stuff. I know that, for example, when I was on to Portland, there was one story. It was some kind of a science fiction story. It had been around so many times that we had to take it down to one of the shops and they had to rebind it because so many people had read it. So take the time, find a local. You can go through your vets. You can go through AmVets is a great organization. American Legion is another one. They all have programs like that where they can get you addresses. You don't have to send it to an individual. Just send it to a unit. The unit will give it out.
Right.
You know, the chaplain, the medic, one of the officers will know, hey, Mike here is having a hard time, so we're going to give him this box. So that's just one of the things I always try to put out there.
A little bit goes a long way, and they're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, and, hey, somebody thought of us. That counts.
Let me tell you what, there was a lot of kids' pictures that kids had drawn on board the Tarawa the week before we got over there. We used to get mail drops, and then what they did was they took a big wood box that they made down in the wood shop, and they would take all these letters from these kids and people. They'd put them in there, and you'd go by, and the limit, you could take 2 at a time. You just reached into the box, pulled out 2 letters, then you go and you read them. You can answer them if you want. Sometimes they give you their address, sometimes they wouldn't. But everywhere on board that ship, berthing, the shops, were these colored pictures. You know, the tree,
Looked like
the
a great
dog.
big refrigerator.
Yeah, just like everywhere. And it was just awesome. It really brings up our spirits.
That's cool. Keep that in mind, folks. Well, so you wrapped up teaching with the Navy. How'd that go?
Unique.
It was a whole different thing, wasn't it?
I was looking for permanent shore duty because at the time my wife and I had gone separate ways and I had the 2 girls. And I was looking for something where I could do it. So permanent shore duty as an aviation physiology training guy was something that I had in the back of my mind. Now, after going through the school and afterwards, my wife and I did stay together for a while. But at least now I was on permanent shore duty. So the thing for aviation physiology techs is, I guess our primary is we're called box flyers. All air crew every so often has to do a low altitude chamber flight. And what we do is we have this chamber that's probably about a little bit, just a tiny bit bigger, maybe not as wide, but bigger, longer than this. And you had 2 sides, and they had oxygen setups at each station. And I think our max was 24 people in there. And they would go on oxygen. We were the inside safety observers.
What were you simulating?
Going up at altitude above 10,000 feet and losing your oxygen, and you become hypoxic. So if you're flying an F-18 at the time, if you were flying an aircraft and all of a sudden you're above 10,000 feet and you start to get hypoxic, you get tunnel vision, you get dizzy, you could black out. So what we did in the chamber was we would take them up to 10,000 feet and then have them take their oxygen mask off. And we had them do things like play cards, a card deck. We had a box where they would take a card, they would look at it and go ace of spades, and then put it in the spade slot.
Checking their cognitive
Right.
abilities.
Then when they started to feel the effects, they were supposed to put themselves back on oxygen. If they didn't, and they started what we called wet fish, they'd flop around and their eyes would roll back or whatever. We would have to go in and put the oxygen back on them. And there was usually 2 or 3 corpsmen aviation physiologists in that. We did the ejection seat trainer. That was a trip.
That's got to be fun.
You would think so. It's not very high, but what they do is they strap them into their seats. We were just starting to get what the NASIS seat, which was the Harrier seat that's in the Harrier, called the NASIS, whatever it is now.
Yeah, that's a jet that can take off
Right.
vertically.
Yep. And but they strap you into this, and you have to be in a certain position. Your body needs to be in a certain position, and you reach up, and you pull the handles, and it has to come all the way down. And this thing would just fire you up. Not as much force as it would be in a real one, but it taught the body position. Helo Dunker was another great thing. And anybody that's been into the Helo Dunker knows what I'm talking about. It's a big trash can that holds, I think, 8 or 9 people. And they have supposed to simulate being in the back, and then the 2 front seats were for the pilot and the co-pilot. Simulate being in a helicopter. When a helicopter usually crashes, it automatically flips upside down. So this Helo Dunker,
Why?
we take these people. Why? Because it's top heavy.
Wow.
Yeah, the
The
engine's
rotors,
on top,
yeah,
and
the
the
rotors, the transmission, the
pulling
engine,
you.
everything. So what it does is when it hits the water, it'll start to, and it flips upside down. So what the Healer Dunker does was we'd strap people in there in full flight gear, and then we would take this down below the water and then flip it upside down. And they had to get out. Usually I think it was 4 runs. The first one was with no blindfold. The second one was with a blindfold, and they got out any way they could. And then I think the third one was blindfolded, and we would tell them where they had to go out. Main hatch, window, right side, or whatever. And I think, there was only 3 runs, I think. And we had Navy divers in there with us, which that group is just phenomenal. What else? We did parachuting, where we would take them up, put them in a parachute harness, pull them up a little to the ceiling above the water. They would fall in, and they'd have to get out of the parachute and out of their harness and inflate their life vest. We taught classes in land survival. What else?
Did you participate in those? I mean, could you
We
tell
had
those
to.
guys,
No,
I
we
know what
had
it feels like, so hop in there.
No, we had to.
Yeah.
We actually had to do, I did 1 static jump at Fort Bragg out of a CH-46 Helo. Just 1. And we did the training. It was a real quick modified training that they did for us. And then we went up and we just walked out the back of the Helo. Our chute opened and we landed. And I didn't have any problem with that. But the
You're
rest
shaking
of
your
it,
head no?
No, I don't. Homie, don't play that shit.
I really didn't think anything of it until after I was on the ground, and then I was like, "Yep, I'm done. Don't want to do that."
Yeah.
But everything, we had to play student all the time. We had to keep our quals up. We couldn't run a piece of gear or teach something unless we did it.
Right.
So
Yeah, I can see that. I've never done this, but I hear you're going to be just fine, so get in line.
well, you'd be surprised.
Statistically, you should be okay.
Statistically, there's no problem here. What we're going to do is we're going to take you, put you in this really tight little space. Now, here's the key. We're going to strap you in to harnesses, take you down below the water line, and then turn it upside down. And on top of that, you're going to be in there with 9 other guys that are kind of freaking out. And on top of that, you're going to be blindfolded because we're going to simulate that you're under the water and it's pitch dark. Yeah, we used to get a lot of people like, nope. We used to get Air Force guys from the Air Force base over there, Andrews, and they used to come over and do some of this training, especially the Helo Dunker. Nope, not doing it. Nope, not doing it.
They'd balk at that, huh?
Oh, yeah.
And then they couldn't pass.
Well, I don't know the whole story, but all that. But the divers that we had were really good. They were down there with inline mask. So they would have the ability, they were on oxygen all the time. They would constantly be pulling people out. I don't think we ever had anybody really get hurt. We had a few cuts and bruises from people trying to come up underneath somebody else. But other than that, did have a guy one time that was so bad in the chamber that we were lucky at the time because we had one of our physiologists, an officer, actually had to put a chokehold on him to get him calmed down. He was so bad. He just had lost it so much and so quick. But other than that, it was all pretty much safe. Very regulated, very watched, very
I'm sure.
safe.
Yeah. I'm thinking G-forces too. These pilots, they go through a lot of G-forces, whether they cause them themselves or they're in an accident or they're falling or climbing at a higher rate of speed. How do you simulate that, or did they take care of all that in the airplane?
Well, when the pilots usually have to go through the G trainer. We didn't have one of those in Norfolk, but there is a G trainer where they take them in there and they'll spin them real fast and let them experience that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the regulations on it is now, but I know they had to do it at least once when they graduated.
Do you know how many G's you pull going from 0 to 1,000,000 miles an hour on an eject seat?
I used to. I know that when you eject back, and again, this could all change with the equipment.
There's
we have
different
now,
equipment.
But when you would eject out of, let's say, an A6 or an F-18, it was enough to knock you out if you weren't. On the seats, the F-18 seats, you actually had like a hood. You'd pull the handles up and over this way into your chest, keeping your elbows in, and there was a thing here. So it didn't take your breath away. And you had your oxygen mask on anyway.
Yeah.
Because it was connected to the seat. Your oxygen was connected through the seat. So when you went out, your oxygen went with you. It wasn't until your chute opened.
So hang on. So when you go out, your seat goes with you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the whole kit and caboodle goes with you.
I thought it just chunked your ass out.
Nope. Nope. The seat goes out, and then what they do is they have seat separation at a certain altitude. And again, I can't remember the exact words. The seat, the pilot, and the seat separate.
Wow.
So the seat goes one way because it's heavier, and then the pilot goes and the chute opens.
Wow.
And then once that happens, then the pilot would disconnect his oxygen mask, get himself prepared in body position to make the landing, whether it was water or land.
You gotta figure. Hopefully they slowed down to a couple of 100 miles an hour before they get thrown out into that wind.
NATOPS is the Bible for flying. Everything that flies has a NATOPS manual, and all of it's all their safety, their training, what their aircraft can do, the mechanics and all that. It's all in the NATOPS. And the pilots and the aircrew that flew these things had to know those NATOPS in and out. So they knew what they could do and what they couldn't do.
Right.
But,
have you seen the new Top Gun?
Yes.
Yeah. The way you answered is the way I feel too. When I talk about ejecting, I think he was doing Mach 1 when he ejected.
Again, you'd have
it
to
messed his hair up a little.
You'd have to talk to a pilot, but
Yeah,
in
but
the
he does
first
his own
movie and the
stunts.
second movie, there was a few things that a few of us went,
Oh, I'm sure.
What? But in the first movie, the F-14 was just a phenomenal airplane. Phenomenal airplane. And then again, I was in an A6 squadron, which was an attack bomber. Now the only thing that comes close to the A6 is the electronic warfare planes, the Prowlers. They're like on an A6 frame, but a little bit bigger.
Okay.
But other than that, everything's changed so much.
It changes faster than it used to change.
I don't
Seems
know
like
how
to
they
me.
do it anymore. I really don't. I couldn't even begin to tell you what the medical field's like in the military anymore. Now, I've been trying to deal with the VA since I've been out. So I could tell you more about the VA medical than I could the regular medical. But I give them a lot of credit nowadays. I really do. What a great bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was called up to do it again, I don't know, being a 63-year-old fat fluffy guy, I don't know if they'd ever do it, but I'd go back. If nothing else, just for the people.
Yeah. Well,
So what did you do after you got out?
Well, I was a single dad with 2 kids living in Virginia Beach. Ended up going home to Ohio. My dad had retired and moved there. My mom and my dad at the time were running the family campground. My grandfather and grandmother had moved to Florida. So we moved in with them at the campground. And my first job was with the county of Delaware. I worked for a program that dealt with unwed teenage mothers. I was I was more of a a director than anything. I would tell them, here's where this appointment is. You need to be here. Do you have the transportation? And we dealt with trying to get teenage mothers the support they needed to keep their children. And I dealt with the fathers and trying to get them involved in the families. I worked with a couple of great ladies. That company now no longer exists. They incorporated them into the actual county.
Mm-hmm.
After that, what did I do? Oh, I took some time off and built a church. Oversaw the building of a Westland church there in Westerville, Ohio. Worked at a factory. Was hired as a safety and quality assurance guy. Ended up being a foreman for 2 industrial lines. They made, at the time, they were making all the plastic signs for Shell, Texaco, and Mobil. You know, the lighted signs and stuff.
Right.
Did that for a while until the company went to south of the border to Nogales. I decided not to go with them. After that, I bummed around for a little bit, worked at the campground. The last job I had was I was a coffee shop manager of a coffee shop called Java Central in Westerville, Ohio. They hired me as coming in as a chef. I ended up managing the place for the owners, and did that for I think 5 years. And then out of the blue, through some personal stuff, I needed a place to go, and my son-in-law and daughter here were kind enough to say, "Dad, why don't you come here?" And that's how I ended up here. So now I help out with the kids, try to find things to do, and fight the VA daily.
There you go.
Well, we thank you for coming out here. Something to do.
This is beautiful out here.
Well, thank you very much.
And people, I'm telling you right now, this is one of the best studios I've ever seen. It's well put together. If you ever need to do stuff or play music or whatever, you got to get a hold of these guys because this is phenomenal. You walk in the door and it hits you.
Yeah.
I mean, like, wow, wait a minute. You look outside of the building.
I could live in that lobby.
I know.
Yeah, no kidding.
But it's great. And these guys are great. You both are great.
Thank you so
I
much.
was grumpy with you, and I do apologize.
That's quite all right. I know what traffic does. I'm in it every day, man.
Don't travel 99.
not south of I-10. That Seco Ranch and all that, West
It's
Park.
crazy.
Yeah,
And there was an accident. And people are like trying to drive. Somebody tried to drive off into the median that's like this, and they flipped. I'm like,
as
why?
if things weren't bad enough. Here I am pissed off. I'm going around these guys. That looks pretty dangerous, but I'm mad. Here I go. Flop. Now you got a problem.
Yep.
Right? Slow down, folks.
It is true.
Well, we were glad to have you come out
I'm
here.
glad to do it. I appreciate the chance to tell a little bit of my history.
Well, if you have any other ideas or any other friends that want to come on out, just let us know. We talk about anything. If you've looked at our channel, you'll see that.
Well, I did, and it was really cool. Again, it's well done.
Thanks.
Well done. I'm not saying that because I'm here. I'm saying it's well done.
Well, it's well done thanks to the man right here.
Yeah.
Me?
You. Yeah. He won't jump out of an airplane, but he can make a hell of a studio, this guy.
Well, I'm learning a lot about Texas. Again, I've been here for a little over 2.5 years, and I'm still learning. So coming out here was a big thing, and I want to start traveling a little bit more. I haven't been to the Hill Country, haven't been to Dallas, I've been
You'll
around
get
the
lost
world
in Dallas.
7 times, guys.
You will get lost in Dallas. I don't care who you are, where you're from. You'll get lost in Dallas.
And if you don't like traffic, don't go to Austin.
That's
It's
3 years
beautiful.
old.
It's beautiful over there. It's the beginning of the hill country, and it's gorgeous, but there's too many people living there.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, my God. They have one road through town, basically, 35. And it took me 4 years to get off of 35 to go visit my sister one time. Yeah. And not quite 4 years, but it seemed like I was on that freeway.
Yeah.
4 years.
Well, I've been around the world 7 times, but I couldn't tell you really what's between the East Coast and the West Coast. I could tell you everything about the East Coast. I could tell you everything about the West Coast. I could tell you a lot about the Gulf Coast, but what's in between it?
Yeah. Because you were just over here and then bam, over there.
Always close to the water.
Yeah.
Now, when we were in Hawaii,
Cool.
we went to the other islands and stuff and did everything there.
Well, the cool thing about Texas is, and if you have time to travel, I hope you really check it out. You got West Texas, You've got the beginning of the Rocky Mountains over there, the Pecos, and what you see, what people think of Texas, in the movies with the buttes and the sand and the saguaro cactus and everything. And then you've got North Texas, which is the Amarillo area, the caverns, and all kind of cool stuff. You've got Dallas, Fort Worth. You can skip that part, but the valley is beautiful and lush, and the beaches. I mean, East Texas, where you're at right now, is just full of
Mosquitoes.
trees and weeds and pollen and
Mosquitoes.
What the hell is good about this
Yeah,
place?
you guys, I always thought Florida was the worst for mosquitoes until I moved here. But like I said, the joke at my coffee group is when I first started meeting this coffee group was, I told them I wanted to go to Waco. I've always wanted to go to Waco for some reason. And they all laughed. They go, why do you want to go to Waco? I said, I just want to go to Waco. So the deal is if I go to Waco and take a picture with the sign that says, welcome to Waco, then I won't have to buy coffee for a year. So I'm going
That's easy enough.
I'm
Yeah.
going to do that
Bad.
real soon.
Yeah.
But but hopefully I stay here for a little bit longer. I may be heading back to the East Coast.
Well, stay in touch with us
I
one
will.
way or another. Hank, you got anything else?
Nope, I don't think so. Upcoming next week, who do we have next week? We have Jason Davis, I believe, with H-Town Dream Center, and so that's going to be a good show. It's a 501c3, and they're a great organization. And they give a lot.
H-Town Dream
H-Town
Center.
Dream Center. They give a lot back to the community, and I'm really interested in interviewing the guy. I think it's going to be good.
Sounds like a good one.
Yeah, and
We
we've
need
got
that.
some other things coming up soon, so I think it's going to be good. Nothing public on the horizon yet. Probably going to wait until it starts to cool off a little bit before we do any of that kind of stuff. But
If
Yeah,
you guys ever
that's
do
all.
anything closer to the presidential election, I want to be in on it.
okay.
Because I bet you that'd be interesting.
Well, around election time, we start doing a lot of interviews for candidates and such.
A lot of local
So,
stuff.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
there's
that's-
not a
that's gonna
lot
happen.
out there for just normal guys like us to sit down and just talk about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's always been my dream, is to have somebody do that, where just talk normally.
Yeah.
You know, why is gas so high, or why is this, or why is the military doing that? So
Well, I was in
Thank
here
you.
last night with an individual, and we had an extensive conversation about why society is the way it is, and that encompassed, the price of gas and just everything. And yeah, I think we've already reached we've gone past the tipping point in this country.
it's
know,
it's getting there.
so-
You know, when people start worrying about whether they've got a handgun, or they've got water, or they've got extra food.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a topic that I hear constantly all the time now. I mean, I've been a prepper for over 30 some odd years, and people now that never have talked about it before are going like, well, I think we should get some more of this, or we
Yeah.
should get that.
There's nothing wrong with being prepared.
No.
But 20 years ago, a prepper was lumped in with
Yeah.
the crazy
The
survivalists,
fanatics,
Yep.
You're a fanatic.
living in a cave
Oh,
out in the
trust
woods.
me, I know.
Yeah.
But when
I know,
shit
been
hits
there.
the fan, and we've talked about it, you got to have food, water, and shelter. You got to start right there.
Yep, the basics.
And
Security
beer.
always first.
Yeah.
You can have beer.
Security's first.
Yeah.
Because no matter how much you have or what you don't have, if you can't keep yourself and your stuff safe, it's not going to work. So security is always first.
Exactly. Because the strongest will get what they want or try to.
But no, again, yeah, anytime. I'm really interested in getting to learn more about Texas and the population. I listen to Glenn Beck all the time and stuff like
It's a
that.
unique mentality here.
I'm
something-
learning that.
Well, we
that I
used to
haven't
be our
seen
own
before.
country. This is
Sure.
the only state, I think, that had ever had its own country flag flying, in the United States. Said, we'd like you to join us. And we thought about it for a while. So
Well, I think Abbott could have it again. He'd have this as a state country again.
that may be.
I don't know, but I really find it. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for
Not
being
a
here.
problem. Thanks for your service. We appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. I think this was a good conversation. I learned a lot. Always do. And it was great having Mark Hogan in, and you did great on the intro, man.
Oh, thanks. I thought I stumbled a little bit. I had Wayne Leonard on my mind, and I was like, thank you, Wayne, or Hank. I've only known you 93 years. Hank, right, with a K?
That's
Got
it, with a K. Yeah. I might change that to a C.
That's you guys need to
just
do a show on that.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah, for sure.
friendship and how you grew up. That way you could tell on each other.
Right, but I don't know if the statute of limitations is run out yet.
You'll get a whole lot of that if you look at the flavored whiskey taste test from about a year and a half ago.
Oh yeah.
We tasted a whole bunch of different whiskeys, and as you can imagine, as the show went on, we got looser about what we were talking about. You remember
Wondering
that time we were smoking a joint behind the church? Oh yeah,
Wondering if that rancher's still looking for you.
yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. For Mark Hogan, I'm Hank Vatt. This is Hank's Think Tank, and we'll see you in the next one.